around the nation right here, TYT Nation. I'm your host, Jeff Waldorf. Got a great show for you guys today. We got a lot of different things to talk about. We do have, of course, some things on the couple of stories on the shooting in Las Vegas. We've got some other stuff to cover as well. For example, we have Mueller, Robert Mueller, and pardons. We're going to talk about that. We've also got Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner. Basically, they might get pushed out by John Kelly. I don't know. That's just my preemptive read of it. But certainly we know that they don't really have. I mean, what do they actually do there? And I don't think anybody has really kind of figured that out. We've also got tax reform, studies on that, and guess who's back? The Mooch. You're going to love the story on Anthony Scaramucci. We've got that, of course, later on in the show. First, I do want to thank some patrons. Before I do that, I want to remind everybody to like and share the stream if you haven't already. Share it around, kind of like an STD, but it doesn't burn as much. Not that I have experience or anything like that. But anyway, I know, terrible joke. Let's go to some patrons. Again, that was bad, but I'm in a super weird mood today. I'm feeling a lot better than I did yesterday. So yesterday was a bit of a disaster with all the negative stuff going on. But anyway, so let's get some patron names up here. We've got Diego Rosario, Erica Antillion, Carl, Discophage, Omar Aziz, Robert T, Rob Sendera, Cole Jones. We have Gloria M, Jason Wong, Steph CH, Brian Newton, Ada Harding. Let's see, let's go back here, down here a little bit further. Samuel Schaefer, Kyle Henshaw, Peter Willett. I'm sorry, not Kyle Henshaw. Mark Malik Hosier, Barry Muhammad, and a couple more names here. Patrick McLean and Salar Tevinger. So thank you to all those people whom I called off for supporting us on Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation. That's how you can help the show. Other ways you can help the show is using the YouTube Super Chat, which is an easy way to help the show, and also elevate your comments, and I'll see them and I'll read them off on air, so when I do see them. All right, anyway, there's all that stuff. Let me go over here to this one and see if I can highlight the Super Chat here so I can see any. Another way, of course, to get a hold of the show is, of course, using the hashtag TYTNation, and tagging me on Twitter at TYTNation. So anyway, that's how you get a hold of the show. And that's, of course, the patrons. It's all the stuff that I've got on that. But let's move forward. We'll start out with Trump's reaction to the Vegas shooting, which is worse than yesterday. So remember how I gave him credit for yesterday? I'm about to take that away. Sad. All right. I'm sorry, frustrating, isn't it? It's barely been a day since the deadliest mass shooting in modern American history, and Donald Trump has managed to already say something incredibly stupid. I want you guys to take a look.
Look, we have a tragedy. We're going to do, and what happened in Las Vegas is in many ways a miracle. The police department has done such an incredible job. And we'll be talking about gun laws as time goes by. But I do have to say, how quickly the police department was able to get in was really very much of a miracle. They've done an amazing job. Go ahead, John.
What happened, in many ways, is a miracle. I know that's not what you meant. I know you meant to go and say, oh, the way that everybody responded to it was absolutely a miracle. And you said that later. But holy shit, man, that did not take long. That did not take long at all. Again, how exactly is that a miracle? I'm sure he meant it was the police reaction. But seriously, don't use that word. Especially when 59 people were killed and over 500 were injured. I mean, look, go ahead and ask the families if they think that anything related to that is a miracle. Now, I said yesterday, of course, after his ridiculous teleprompter speech, which, again, it was ridiculous because it had to be a teleprompter speech, because if he goes off the teleprompter, well, then he says all sorts of nonsensical things like what you just heard. He should not do anything other than adhere to a script. Somebody should follow him around 24/7 with a script of things to say. If they do not, well, this is what happens. But look, serious though. Here's a serious point. Basically, on the issue of, oh, what do we do about guns? Dismissed it. Oh, don't worry, we'll be talking about it. Really? Really? When do you plan on talking about it? He doesn't plan on talking about it. He's not going to talk about it. He's not going to talk about it. In fact, he follows that up in this clip.
We'll talk about that later. He was a sick man, a demented man, a lot of problems, I guess, and we're looking into him very, very seriously, but we're dealing with a very, very sick individual. Thank you. Thank you.
Now, wait, why are we going to look into the guy when the guy is not necessarily the major problem here? The major problem is the fact that there were many, many guns there. And these guns were legally modded to be able to shoot in an automatic fashion. And we'll get into that in a minute, but okay. So you want to talk about the shooter. Okay. Oh, fine. Okay. His record was squeaky clean. I mean, sure, yeah. You could say he absolutely was a sick person and he had a problem, right? I don't know what that problem was. But I do know the major problem with him is that he performed a terrorist attack. Now, he was perfectly legal to buy a gun. I understand that. That made him a law-abiding citizen. So he was a law-abiding citizen until then he was not. That's sort of why we need some gun control people here, okay? Now, look, he was able to amass an arsenal of weapons and modify them to be able to shoot like automatic weapons. That, of course, allowed him to shoot hundreds of rounds at the crowd below. Now, we've got to do something about that, and there are ideas floating around about banning the modifications that will allow you to be able to turn a semi-automatic rifle into an automatic rifle. Now, will he do that? No, he'll likely do the opposite, actually. And look, do you know what bill was making its way around Congress right before this happened? A bill to remove the ban on silencers. Now, that has nothing to do with this. It wouldn't have prevented this crime. But that just shows you the direction that the GOP is going. You're not going to get under any gun control measures done under the GOP and under Donald Trump. Now, that's weird because Republicans actually used to be okay with gun control. In fact, Ronald Reagan signed an assault weapons ban. Of course, nowadays, our politicians, they're bought by the gun manufacturers and the NRA, which, again, used to stand for gun safety. Now, old school NRA, I actually would have been in favor of. Like, oh yeah, teaching kids gun safety, make sure everybody, is able to treat their weapons like weapons, and shoot them carefully and make sure that nobody gets hurt and all that, and do sporting events. Wonderful, right? Well, the NRA now does not stand for that. It actually stands for the gun manufacturers and their profits. Now, if that means your kids get gunned down in a concert or even in their own school, well, that's okay, because the gun manufacturers that pay the NRA, that pay these politicians, well, they end up getting an extra buck. And likely, they will actually end up getting more money. As every time this happens, you get gun sales that spike. And even now, after this happened, what was the thing that happened immediately after the Vegas attack? The stock in weapons, gun manufacturers went up people started buying more and more guns. This is literal blood money, okay? And right now, look, we've got all these bought-off members of Congress, and because of that, we're not going to see any gun control. That's where a lot of my cynicism that came out yesterday came from. Now, some of you out there in the audience, you might be like, yeah, fuck gun control, right? You'll be cheering until it happens in your town. Now, I hope it doesn't. But look, nearly 100 people die every day from gun violence. I know a lot of those are suicides. It's possible that those could be prevented as well. And we've got over 300 million guns in this country that are actually in the hands of smaller and smaller amount of people, which means you have less people hoarding more and more guns. And we also seem to have a mass shooting almost every day. So if you think that this kind of thing is not going to happen to you, the odds are not in your favor. And it's very likely that you're not going to end up getting out your gun and saving the day. That's not how things work. So we've got to actually do something about it and not just sit around and do nothing like the Republicans and Donald Trump want you to do. It's kind of a related thing. I was tagged in a Twitter conversation earlier today, and this person was like, oh, gun control laws, government control, not going to work. And I'm like, okay, well, what's your solution to this? And he's like, well, mental illness is hard to spot, and there's always going to be guns, so my solution is leave it up to God. And when I laughed at the guy, because it was stupid, typical liberal response, make fun of somebody and not offer real solutions. Motherfucker, you are not offering real solutions. Leaving it up to God is not a solution. Your solution is do literally nothing while people are dying. Nothing. Well, just leave it up to God. The projection from these people. And that's what you're getting from a lot of the Republicans, a lot of the GOP members in Congress that are bought off by these giant corporations, these weapons manufacturers, whose only goal is to make as much profit as possible. And again, if that leads to more people dying, well, hey, if more people die and we have more attacks like this, well, then more people are going to go out and buy guns so they can feel safe. Well, that helps our profit margin. Why would we change that? We've created these amoral machines that say, go and make profit at any cost. And if you're going to profit off death, if you're going to profit off weapons, well, then you're going to do whatever you can to make sure that there is more weapons and there is more death so you can make more profit. That's what this is about. It's insane. The problems in this country, man. Anyway, I want to go to a slightly better story about Las Vegas. I feel like we've been focusing a lot on the bad. But here's something that's somewhat good. All right. Now, yesterday was the deadliest mass shooting in American history. Now, 59 people were killed and over 500 were injured when a man used a semi-automatic rifle that was modified into an automatic rifle to shoot indiscriminately into a crowd of thousands of country music listeners from his 32nd story hotel room. Let me start that again. That was awful. So yesterday we had the deadliest mass shooting in American history. Now you had 59 people who were killed, over 500 were injured, when a man used a modified semi-automatic rifle to shoot indiscriminately into a crowd of over 20,000 country music listeners. Now, he did this from his 32nd story hotel room. Now, in the wake of the shooting, of course, a lot of people on the left are calling for stricter gun control members. Now, this includes one of the survivors of the attack, but he is not from the left. Now, what makes the story very telling is actually this is somebody who would be considered very conservative when it comes to the gun rights issue. Now, this man is a guitarist who was actually playing during that music festival when they were attacked, and he said in a viral Twitter post that he was wrong about his support for the Second Amendment. Now, the man's name is Caleb Keeter, and he is the guitarist for the Josh Abbott band. And he said on Twitter yesterday that he had been a supporter of the Second Amendment for his entire life. Now, when I read that, I was like, what does that actually mean? I mean, for example, I support the Second Amendment. Now, I'm in favor of also things like background checks, closing gun show loopholes, not selling weapons to suspected terrorists, and other things that I consider fairly common sense, right? So, yes, I believe in people being able to own weapons, but I also believe that we should have some restrictions on who gets access to those weapons and what kind of weapons they have access to. Now, some people will look at that and still call me a gun-grabbing commie. And that sort of shows you what kind of discourse we have around guns in America. Now, as this relates to him, I'm assuming his support or previous support of the Second Amendment means we should have unfettered access to weapons because only a good guy with a gun can stop a bad guy with a gun. That's the whole NRA mindset that they have, right? And, we need guns to keep us safe and to protect us from terrorists and home invasions and thugs and all that stuff. So that's sort of, I guess, what people like that believe. And I believe what this guy also used to believe. Now, so keep that argument in mind, right? Now, in his tweets, he said that, again, he was a Second Amendment supporter until the events of last night. Quote, I cannot express how wrong I was. We actually have members of our crew with concealed handgun licenses and legal firearms in the bus. So, wait, you had a group of good guys and they had guns. Well, what was the problem? Well, the problem, he says, is that during the attack, they were, quote, useless. Really? Well, I thought the whole line was, well, you got to have a good guy with a gun to stop the bad guy with the gun, right? Well, there's obviously a bad guy with many, many guns. But there were people in the crowd that also had many, many guns. So naturally, why didn't they just pull out those weapons and start using them for freedom? Well, it turns out that they couldn't get a hold of them. Quote, we couldn't touch them for fear police might think that we were part of the massacre and shoot us. And that right there is the most sensible line I think that I've ever heard. And I think this is the realization that smacked him in the face during this attack. Oh, right. If we try to grab our gun and shoot back, well, number one, what happens when the police come? They're going to think that we did it, and we're going to be dead. See, this is the thing, right? We've been trying to pound that into people's heads for years. For years. Oh, and this is the whole line that they use, right? It's some, like, whenever this happens, there's always a dumbass out there. It's like, oh man, if only somebody had a gun during this terrorist attack, they could have pulled their weapon, they could have actually stopped it. Well, that's not how the real world works, dude. Number one, you're not John fucking McClane. Number two, this is not Die Hard. Okay? If you pull your gun and return fire, right, which in this case would have been a disaster, as in most cases, but number one, he's on the 32nd floor. You think you're going to hit somebody from the ground, under fire, who's sitting on the 32nd floor? He's got you pinned down. That's not a situation where you can return fire. And number two, say you're able to return fire and you miss. How many innocent people are you going to hit in that hotel when you try to return fire? And of course, number three, what he realized is, oh, right, when the cops get there, they're going to shoot you. And if you get shot by the cops in that situation, you've got nobody to blame but yourself. Okay? But look, these are the people that think that they can single-handedly stop a terrorist attack if only they are armed. Well, those people are living in a fantasy world. They're going to get themselves, they're going to get other people killed. This is what we're trying to say. We're just trying to say, hey, you know what? That fantasy of you being a good guy, great intentions aside, you're an idiot. Please don't. You're going to make the situation that much worse. And there are rare situations where there is a good guy with the gun at the right time in the right place. Now, we're accused of not covering those instances. Like, oh, look at that. The liberal media doesn't want to cover it. When this very, very rare instance of somebody saving another person's life with a gun happens, yes, it does happen. But you know what happens far more often? The opposite. Somebody gets killed with the gun that's supposed to save them. You're far more likely, and the statistics bear this out, you're far more likely to be killed with your own gun in your own home, or to kill a family member on accident. It's just the numbers, it's math. And I'm sorry if you don't like math, then you're not going to like what I'm saying. But it's math. Anyway. Now, he also said that, quote, one small group or one man, he wasn't sure which I understand, laid waste to a city with dedicated, fearless police officers desperately trying to help because of access to an insane amount of firepower. Now, originally I reported that it was reported that he had 10 guns. Turns out he had 19 guns in his possession in the hotel room with him, and hundreds of rounds of ammunition. Now, of course, that got me thinking, wait a minute, how come nobody fucking noticed? Did you not notice all the guns being stockpiled in your room? Like when room service came? Oh, hey, nice arsenal. Here's your complimentary mint. I don't know. How do you not notice that? Maybe they did notice. Maybe they didn't question it because in Nevada, open carry is legal. You can have as many guns as you want. Nobody bats an eye because freedom. Whatever. Now he continues, writing my parents and the love of my life a goodbye last night in a living will because I felt like I wasn't going to live through the night was enough for me to realize that this is completely and totally out of hand. These rounds were powerful enough that my crews, just standing in close proximity of a victim shot by this fucking coward, received shrapnel wounds. Shrapnel wounds. He followed up by saying, quote, we need gun control right now. I agree with that. I mean, there's nothing to dispute there. Now, look, as far as what gun control measures, I know this will always come up in the comments. Well, what might have worked to prevent this? I don't know. Not necessarily sure what overall methods would have worked. I do know of one. There are, right now, legal modifications for your guns that will allow you to shoot faster. There are things like bump fire or crank fire mods. Now, those should be off the market. There's no reason that you need to get a semi-automatic weapon to fire like an automatic weapon. Just saying. Now, that little regulation banning those, that might have actually helped in this case. And I believe that there is a federal ban on those, but some states, no, there's not a federal ban, but there are some states that do ban those types of modifications. But we don't have anything federally on the books. Now, in case you think, but wait a minute, it's my freedom. I'm a law-abiding citizen. Well, you have to remember, just like many mass shooters, this guy was also a law-abiding citizen until he stopped being one. Now, as far as Mr. Keeter, look, he's likely getting a lot of criticism from both sides. Now, definitely getting it from the pro-gun crowd for saying that his previous stance on gun control was, quote, wrong, stupid, and selfish. Again, I agree with that, but I don't agree with that criticism. But he's also getting some criticism from the left, and I do understand this. Now, he said that my biggest regret is that I stubbornly didn't realize it until my brothers on the road and myself were threatened by it. Now, I understand that criticism, as I said, because it's the old, oh, you don't get it until it happens to you. Well, you know what? Some people are like that. They have to experience something that directly challenges their beliefs in order to affect change. Now, there are some people that go through stuff like this and they don't change at all. But at least this guy, he's like willing to examine his own belief system and say, hey, you know what? Turns out I was way fucking wrong on that. Yeah, maybe we need to do something. Because, again, traumatic moment, right? Now, if you decide, like I've seen some people do, to get all elitist on them and be like, well, you see, you're selfish, you don't believe in anything until you're personally affected by it. Dude, doing that's not going to get people to change their minds. You're actually going to put people off. You want more people to be on your side. It's not about being right. We already know we're right. You don't have to rub it in. And what you do is that you make sure, like, to welcome people to your side. Like, hey, welcome to the world of facts. Like, we're glad to have you. It sucks that you had to find out the hard way, but boy, we're glad to have you on our side now. And look, our side is not the left. It's actually, we're on the side of most of the American people. For example, on different gun control measures, like background checks, for example, a large majority of the American people agree that we should do things like that. Now, Congress, of course, they do not represent the will of the American people. And not even, like, the NRA does not represent the will of most gun owners when it comes to gun control measures. But that's what we're trying to change. And again, this a lot of this has to do with the money in politics coming from the gun manufacturers, the gun lobby, to the politicians. So, and that's why we're not getting change. But to get back to what he previously believed about gun control, well, first of all, there's this narrative that's been going on around the right, that old liberals, they just want to take your guns. They're gun-grabbing commies. Now, some people do actually want to eliminate all the guns, and I understand that position. I would say that in America, that is a minority position, but that's what they present as the mainstream leftist position. Now, that's garbage. I know a lot of liberal gun owners that are like, yeah, well, no, we don't agree that we should take everybody's guns, because I actually like having my guns, but I do want gun control, and I do think that certain weapons could be at least considered being banned. And it varies on the left on which ones and which gun control measures work, and that's a healthy debate to have, okay? But again, that's what they present as the leftist position is, no, they all want to grab your guns. And basically what that is that it's a giant-ass straw man. So they can say that if you don't support unfettered access to all weaponry, i.e. the Second Amendment, that's what they believe the Second Amendment is all about. Now, shall not be infringed, Jeff, shall not be infringed. Really? Well, we have the ability to actually make regulation. I mean, we can regulate the First Amendment. If we can regulate the First Amendment, why can't we regulate the Second Amendment? And we have throughout history. So this is historical context in there. But anyway, they think that if you're for being able to do that, put some regulation, that you're basically with the gun-grabbing communists. And again, that's not true. And that's not even the mainline conservative position, I don't think. And again, that's also not the NRA membership position as well. That's only the position of some people that are on the super fringe right, and of course, some in the NRA, for example, Wayne LaPierre, who basically serves as a front for gun manufacturers. So basically, his conversion is to the majority of the American public who do believe in gun ownership, but with certain rules and regulations that would make it harder for certain people to get their hands on certain types of weapons. So with that said, I am going to take the step of welcoming Caleb Keeter to the fight and basically say that, hey, it's good to see you here. Welcome to the fold with the rest of us. It's good to have people on board. Okay. So that's all the gun stuff. Let's move on, shall we? Special Prosecutor Robert Mueller has a bit of a problem. What to do if the president decides he would like to either pardon himself or his inner circle before anybody is charged with a crime. That is preemptive pardoning. Now, it is a legitimate concern because, again, he's been asking around about his pardon powers. Now, again, big problem, right? That is assuming Mueller actually has anything on Donald Trump. Now, my opinion is that he is building a good case against Donald Trump, and he does have it. Now, you can have a different opinion on that, and I guess that's fine. We'll see what happens in the end. But don't worry, on the pardon issue, Mueller's actually thought of something already. In fact, according to Bloomberg, Mueller, with his all-star team of prosecutors, who are experts in money laundering and foreign bribery, have a solution. Now, this is a man named Michael Dreeben. So that's his solution. He's hired on a guy named Michael Dreeben. Now, let me give you some background about this guy. Acting as Mueller's top legal counsel, Dreeben has been researching past pardons and determining what, if any, limits exist, according to a person familiar with the matter. Dreeben's broader brief is to make sure the special counsel's prosecutorial moves are legally airtight, so they actually can't find a way to overturn what Mueller does, which is pretty smart. Now, that could include anything from strategizing on novel interpretations of criminal law to making sure the recent search warrant on ex-campaign advisor Paul Manafort's home would stand up to an appeal. Now, Dreeben, 62, has built that expertise over 3 decades as an appealed lawyer at the Justice Department. As a deputy solicitor general, he pored over prosecutors' moves in more than 1,000 different federal criminal prosecutions and defended many of them from challenges all the way to the nation's highest court. So this guy seems like a pretty smart guy, and he is joining the Mueller investigation. Now, do a little comparison, right? So Mueller's got all these top lawyers, right? All these top lawyers who left very lucrative positions and cases to go join the Mueller case. They wouldn't do that on a whim, would they? On a long shot? I think they wouldn't. I guess some people might argue that no, it's all a witch hunt still. All right, whatever. Now, still, comparison-wise, who does Trump have? Well, Trump's got 2 guys who possibly meant to get caught trashing the White House special counsel. That's Don McGahn. I don't know, man. Trump, if they have anything on him, is likely screwed. Mueller is not fucking around, and he's shown that. Now, no wonder the White House is kind of nervous. Now, more on Mr. Dreeben. Dreeben has begun working on legal issues as a counselor to Mueller, but is still retaining some of his Solicitor General work for the sake of continuity. This according to Peter Carr, spokesman for the special counsel's office. Carr declined to elaborate on Dreeben's work with Mueller or make Dreeben available for comment. So he's tight-lipped, man. So, okay. Now, the question you might have is why the Mueller team is so concerned with Trump pardoning people preemptively. Well, it's possible that they actually have something out. But it's also possible just for the fact that Donald Trump hasn't been shy about talking about his powers. In fact, a lot of people in Trump's inner circle have been in Mueller's sight. It's Paul Manafort, Jared Kushner, Michael Flynn, and of course, going back to where he's actually openly talked about his pardoning powers. And those are the people that he might consider pardoning, by the way. He said before that the president has a complete power to pardon. Now, why would you say that if you're not going to at least think of the possibility of using that for either you or your friends? Interesting. Now, Bloomberg also notes that some of those kinds of executive moves have been well studied, including Gerald Ford's swift pardon of Richard Nixon and Bill Clinton's exoneration of fugitive financier Mark Rich. However, in this case, the case of what they're looking at for Trump's campaign and Trump himself, the legal territory is largely uncharted over pardons of president's own campaign workers, family members, or even himself, and how prosecutors' work would then be affected. So what they're saying is that we haven't been here before. Now, I think you could say that a lot about this entire election cycle. For example, we've never had a reality show president or anyone like Trump in office. I mean, 8 years ago, this entire thing was unfathomable. We couldn't even imagine. But now we live in an upside-down world. So the question is that I think people are asking are, okay, so what does this guy bring to the table? Well, according to people who know him personally, he brings a credibility that comes from parsing how criminal prosecutions have played out across the country. According to Miguel Estrada, a lawyer at Gibson, Dunn and Crutcher, he has a knack for building careful arguments and the eloquence in court to lay them out in well-reasoned paragraphs. Now let's just, again, compare that a little bit for fun with Trump when he's off the teleprompter. Just saying. I mean, there's plenty of video that you could look at for Trump making a speech, and then compare it to somebody who apparently speaks very eloquently and builds careful, reasoned arguments. Now, here's another interesting bit of information. Dreeben had previously argued on another corruption case that was very high profile. It turns out he went to uphold the conviction of former Virginia Governor Bob McDonnell. Now, Bob McDonnell was convicted of corruption. Now, that story happened way back in 2013. I remember covering it on the show. What happened is that Bob McDonnell received tons of campaign gifts. And he got Rolex watches, money, even catering for his daughter's wedding. All that was paid for by a very wealthy donor of his. Interesting. Now, on that case, you couldn't get more corrupt than Bob McDonnell. Now, sadly, of course, Dreeben ended up losing that case because our Supreme Court is incredibly corporate and donor friendly. So they decided, oh, these gifts, no, they're just speech. They were just talking to each other. Oh, is that how it works? So, but that was his last high-profile case, and even though he lost the case, John Roberts had some very encouraging words about it. So he spoke very highly of Dreeben and his arguments. He just couldn't get past the fact that, well, man, we really like corporations. And we really like corporate corruption, which Dreeben was standing against. So how does that case affect their case against the Trump organization? Well, Dreeben's reviews of how cases were built against McDonnell and others will be invaluable to the Mueller investigation. Appellate lawyers like Dreeben are stuck with decisions already made at the prosecutorial level, said Estrada, who worked in the Solicitor General's office in the 1990s. But now, he added, Dreeben is in a position to troubleshoot problems before cases are filed. He said, you have to argue what you've got, and the cake is already baked. On Mueller's team, by contrast, Dreeben has the opportunity to measure the flour. Basically, that means he's been put in a very powerful position that can set precedent for prosecuting corruption at the presidential level. That's what this case is actually about. It's not necessarily about, ooh, the election, Hillary Clinton stolen by Putin. No. A lot of people actually don't care about that. Some people do, for sure, but that's not the main focus, at least for me. The main focus is Donald Trump's corruption and the corruption inside of his cabinet and any possible deals that could have evolved from said corruption. Now, whether or not anyone actually did corruption by taking money or information from a foreign government or made some sort of deal is what they're trying to find out. Now, that is going to be very, very important, that experience that Dreeben has in prosecuting corruption and the fact that he now is in a position to be able to set precedent. They're going to be very, very important moving forward, since this is uncharted territory. So he's got the opportunity, man. The Trump organization, anybody in it and anybody connected to it, if they're not worried before, they should be now. It looks like Mueller is dotting his I's and crossing his T's. Because this is another example of the kind of talent he's decided to bring onto his team. And the very reason that I believe Trump will soon attempt to shut him down and his investigation. We'll have to see whether or not that happens, or if he can finish his investigation and we can see what he's found, if there is anything to be found. Stay tuned. That story is not over yet. All right. So let's go from that to Ivanka Trump. Okay. Now, the president has been getting a lot of heat over the fact that his daughter Ivanka and Jared Kushner have roles in the White House. Now, I'm pretty sure that's because of the fact that this is clear nepotism, and those two offer nothing. Even if they offered something, very, very clear nepotism, right? Now, as far as doing something, what has Jared Kushner done? What has Ivanka done? We don't know. What are they actually doing there? I don't know. Now, because of these questions and other pieces of bad press, President Trump is trying to figure out what they can actually do in the White House to get away from those bad articles and those questions. Now, Axios reported on Monday that Ivanka and her husband have decided that they are going to stay in their lane and shrink their ambiguous roles in the administration as White House Chief of Staff John Kelly implements stricter policies throughout the West Wing. And John Kelly's trying to find out what exactly they're doing. Okay, where can we put you, Jared? Where can we put you, Ivanka? What do you actually do? What do you actually bring to the table? Well, he's going to find that they bring pretty much nothing. But it's actually gotten so bad that Trump, according to Politico, confronted his daughter in front of several staffers about this negative news coverage about her. The president said, quote, "Baby, you're getting killed. This is a bad deal." Well, hey, look, I got an idea on how you stop the bad press. You could always resign, go back to selling crappy shoes. Oh, wait, you haven't actually stopped selling crappy shoes. That's right. Maybe that's part of the problem. The fact that you are sitting in and doing business deals when you're actually supposed to be doing whatever it is you were supposed to do. Influence your father, and it turns out you're not very good at that. And you admit that you're not good at that. So what do you do? What do you do? Now, of course, that doesn't mean that he's going to kick them out. In fact, according to a White House official, the president isn't seeking to oust any of his family members from the administration. In fact, he's actually trying to protect them from bad press. Again, you know how to protect them from bad press? Resign. Oh, what was that? Oh, I'm sorry. I had something in my throat. Now, others in the administration are also frustrated with the couple's presidents and political affairs. This is including White House counsel Don McGahn. Now, Don McGahn has apparently vented to friends about the complications of having the president's family members working in the administration, according to a report in Axios. Now, if you can remember, McGahn is the guy that Trump's lawyers were overheard talking shit about in that nice little open-air meeting that they had. Now, I'm guessing that he's not very popular among the Trump circle, especially when he's complaining about Jared and Ivanka. So, actually being there. Nonetheless, thanks to John Kelly, Ivanka has apparently taken a smaller role of doing absolutely nothing, which she was already doing before. Again, I don't understand what they're doing. What are they doing? What do they do? This is like the guy with the stapler in the office. Like, what are you doing? Or no, it was Office Space. Sorry. Like, what do you actually do here? They can't answer the question because they don't do anything. Still, the report says the first daughter has made an effort to adhere to Kelly's orders, which include informing the chief of staff about all meetings she plans with world leaders or international organizations, and asking for permission to speak with her father on governmental matters. Now, Kushner, however, seems to be a bit more problematic. Like, she knows. Ivanka knows she doesn't actually do anything. She doesn't have a real role. So she's like, I'm going to stay in my lane. I'm going to try to stay out of trouble, right? Kushner, no. He's like, they said that his varying job ambitions include establishing peace in the Middle East and overhauling America's tax and trade policies, has reportedly been grappling with how to adhere by Kelly's formal processes. Politico reported that Kelly was livid about Kushner's dealings in the White House after it was discovered that he had back-channeled communications with lawmakers to discuss the president's decision on DACA. The chief of staff then asked to be briefed on the administration's strategy regarding the DACA decision, White House officials said. Now, look, John Kelly is somebody who's a immigration hardliner, but he's also in favor of DACA. The reason that he was pissed off is that, hey, you can go through me. Like, I'm trying to set rules. I'm trying to set boundaries. I'm actually trying to make this White House functional, and you're going behind my back. You can't do that. Now, of course, Kelly says that he's willing to work with Kushner, saying in a statement, Jared is a valued member of the White House staff. But look, you got to understand the conditions inside that White House and the position that Jared Kushner actually has in the Trump organization. You can't come out and say Jared Kushner sucks. He's getting in the way. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's going behind my back. You can't do that. No, if you want to get along with Trump, you've got to kiss his ass. So, yes, it's very natural for Kelly to say, no, what are we talking about? I wasn't livid. I wasn't mad at all. I just wanted to be part of the process. That's all. Jared's a fine person. He's a valued member of the White House staff. But at the same time, he's got to figure out what to do with Jared. Because, again, he's not a trained diplomat. He doesn't know immigration policy, and he doesn't bring anything else to the table. He may be an important advisor to Donald Trump, but, again, what does he know about the actual topics that he's trying to advise on? My guess is not very much. And so, again, I know it feels like I'm repeating myself. I know I'm repeating myself, but I don't think it's sinking in. They shouldn't be here. They shouldn't be there. They shouldn't be there. And again, they're only there because of nepotism. You give them as many different roles as they like, or as few as you like. That doesn't change the fact that they're just simply unqualified to be there. This is like if Hillary Clinton had won and she decided to put Chelsea Clinton in as an advisor. She doesn't belong there. She doesn't belong there. And if that happened, imagine the outrage on the right. Imagine. But of course, we're not going to see that from people who are Trump supporters when it comes to Ivanka and Jared. And sadly, we never will see that because it's all about hypocrisy. Okay. Let's go to tax cuts. Tax cuts and then the mooch. Now, the White House continues to try to sell their massive tax cut to the rich start that again. The GOP continues to try to sell their massive tax cut for the rich to regular working people. Well, how's that going? Apparently not very well, because they have to lie about it. Now, one of the ways that they're trying to sell this tax plan is to say things like, oh, these tax cuts, they're actually going to go and help the rich people. This isn't a tax cut for rich people. This is a tax cut for middle class people. It just turns out that cutting taxes on the rich, well, they end up getting a bigger share of this tax cut. But don't worry, they're going to help you. They're going to help you. They're not designed to help the rich. They're going to help you more. Really? Well, how? Well, last month on Fox News, Last month on Fox News, Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin had said this, quote, most economists believe that over 70% of corporate taxes are paid for by the workers. Now, is that true? I don't believe so. That's actually a very dubious statistic. I don't know what economists are saying that. But what exactly does that mean in relation to cutting corporate taxes? Well, he explained that if you cut corporate taxes, then those regular workers will see 70% of the benefit. See? Oh, look at that. Corporate tax cuts are going to help you that are working on the floor. Sounds great, right? Sure it does, except that it's massive bullshit. Why? It's because we actually have facts. 5 years ago, the Obama-era Treasury Department found the exact opposite. A research paper on the topic concluded that corporate tax cuts would actually overwhelmingly benefit owners of capital rather than workers. No shit, no surprise. Corporate tax cuts are going to help the people that own the corporations. Yes, of course. Not only that, but the 2012 paper I'm sorry. This is one paper. There are others. This one is the 2012 paper by the Office of Tax Analysis concluded that workers pay for only 18% of corporate taxes, meaning they only get about 18% of the benefit of the tax cut. Owners of capital, on the other hand, pay for 82%, the paper found, meaning that they would get the vast majority of the benefit from the GOP tax plan, tax plan's proposed corporate rate cuts. Under the current plan, the corporate tax rate would decrease from 35% to 20%, and most of that would obviously benefit the wealthy and the corporations. Now, of course, the Trump administration didn't like that study, so what did they do? Did they try to debunk it? No. They actually deleted the study off the website. According to the Wall Street Journal, the findings have been removed from the Treasury Department's website. Oh, that study goes against our tax cuts? Deleted, gone. What study? Well, that's rather odd, wouldn't you say? Well, not really, because they can't debunk it. Turns out they didn't like facts. Now, the Wall Street Journal asked the Treasury Department why they got rid of it. And here's what their spokeswoman said. Quote, the paper was a dated staff analysis from the previous administration. It does not represent our current thinking and analysis. Here's a translation. Yeah, we didn't like that study. It goes against our tax cuts, so we got rid of them. See, we believe that corporate tax cuts are awesome because we mostly benefit from corporate lobbying. So, yes, we love our tax cuts, and we're going to get them at any cost. And if that means we're going to lie to you, then yeah, we're absolutely going to lie to you because we have absolutely no data to back up our bullshit claims. So we're just going to get rid of the facts. This is a fact-free White House. Now, here's another study they'd love to get rid of. In 2012, the CBO also did a study about corporate tax cuts. Well, what did they find? They found that only 75% of the burden of corporate tax cuts are borne by owners and 25% by workers. In 2013, the Nonpartisan Joint Committee on Taxation performed its own analysis and came to the exact same conclusion as the CBO. So here you have Steve Mnuchin straight up lying and the Treasury Department bearing evidence that counteracts their claims. This is how bad they want these tax cuts. Now, the reason, of course, that they're trying to sell it as something that will help regular workers is because it turns out if you try to sell it as a tax cut for the rich, well, then it's not going to be very popular. Turns out, tax cuts for corporations and wealthy people, not very popular with regular working people who will end up paying more sometimes under this plan. Now, so of course they have to say that that it's actually going to help them in order to get them to actually buy into this tax cut myth. But trust me, it doesn't work. Tax cuts for the rich do not stimulate the economy, and they don't actually help the workers. You're not going to get trickled on. It doesn't happen, and most people know that. In fact, most people polled say that the rich and large corporations should pay their fair share in taxes, and of course small businesses and individuals should end up paying less in taxes. That's what the majority of people feel. They're like, yeah, why would we want the rich to pay less when they have most of the money? Why should I have to pay more? But so again, this is part of their strategy. They've got to lie. They've got to bullshit. They've got to bury the truth in order to try to pass these enormous, unnecessary tax cuts. And look, I hope that the American people are smart enough not to fall for it. We'll see. I tend to believe that we are because, look, when it comes down to it, we actually do have the facts on their side. No matter how much they try to delete them off their own website, those facts will still exist, and people still, at the end of the day, know what's fair and know what isn't fair, and they also know what is and isn't bullshit. Okay. One more here. Let's talk about the mooch. We're going to have a little fun with this last story. Now, you guys remember Anthony Scaramucci? He's the guy that literally lasted about a week in the Trump administration. Well, it turns out he is back. And, oh, well, he happened to come back just before we actually started to miss him. But he's not only back, he's actually starting his own new media organization. Wonderful. Now, McClatchy actually sat down with Scaramucci and discussed this new media outlet that's going to be called the Scaramucci Post. This is going to be great. Now, he says, quote, I'm going to have people from the left on this as well as people from the right. Oh, wonderful. So it's going to be bipartisan. He also says that when it comes to news, he's actually not going to be picking sides. Quote, I don't see a role for the Scaramucci Post to be picking sides in primaries or even picking sides in the political spectrum. Scaramucci told McClatchy, that's Breitbart's business model. My business model is going to be something that hasn't been proven before. It may or may not work. Now, look, I love the little dig at Breitbart because he's not exactly a fan of Breitbart's leader, CEO, Steve Bannon. In fact, if you can remember during that fun little New Yorker interview, he said that Steve Bannon was essentially in the Trump administration to suck his own dick. That's a quote. So, well, look, and now that Bannon is back at, he's back at Breitbart, here comes Scaramucci saying, hey, you know what? If Steve Bannon can get in there, suck his own dick, and then get fired and go back to Breitbart, why can't I make my own media organization? Well, hey, I guess that makes sense. Now, the only thing is, he says it's going to be much, much different than Breitbart, since Breitbart is totally hard right and is basically a Trump-supporting publication, right? He says, no, I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna play it down the middle. And even though I'm gonna play it down the middle, that doesn't mean I won't get into partisan politics. In fact, he says, would I write a campaign check to somebody, or if somebody asked me to campaign with them, or if I thought somebody had the right policies, they're gonna serve the American people, would I help them? I probably would at some point. Well, hey, at least he's being honest about that. And he said he would probably come in at the end of the 2018 congressional elections, whether that's campaigning or donating in his personal capacity too. Now, that's actually very interesting because we don't necessarily know which way the mooch is going to go. He could go either way. For example, before he joined the Trump administration, he was actually at some point supporting Hillary Clinton. So again, super weird. You don't know where this guy's going to end up. Now, in the meantime, before the elections happen, he's actually turning his attention to propping up the Scaramucci Post. Now, that's apparently been active on Twitter for several weeks before Monday's official launch. Now, he was also very vague on some of the details of the venture, but said that there would be advertisers, of course, and that the organization would start off with a focus on video and video interviews. Oh, that's fun. He said, quote, there are components of this that are think tank in their orientation. There are components that are plain vanilla news that is frankly unfiltered, kind of cold brew news, if you will, and then there will be parts that are policy related. Hey man, good luck with that. Talking from experience, the news business is not exactly easy, but whatever, man. And hey, it actually might be very entertaining if it's anything like the New Yorker interview. I would actually I'll be in favor and look forward to seeing you do some of these video rants. That should be incredibly entertaining at the very least. Now, he was also asked about if he has any metrics for success of the Scaramucci Post. And I love his answer. Quote, I don't have any benchmarks, but on my instincts. When we start to galvanize more advertisers and more eyeballs and people say, wait a minute, this is a destination I can go to where I can get a lot of content. It's a learning center from an editorial point of view, which doesn't even make any sense. It will be non-pedantic. We don't have to have smarty pants editorialists talking down to our consumers. If anything, what we have to do is we have to talk up to consumers. I'm sorry. This is hilarious. This is entertaining. So, hey man, he's going to run editorial, but don't worry. It's not going to be smarty pants editorial. Okay, hey, God bless. You know what? I do non-smarty pants editorial all the time, so wonderful. Now, finally, he said, quote, I can't actually tell you what the Scaramucci post is going to be. It's funny. He just said it was going to be this a learning center and non-pedantic and all that stuff, but he can't say what it's going to be. But what I can tell, the paid Twitter trolls and the haters and MoveOn.org and all these crazy people, don't bet against me. As long as I'm out of the grave and I'm moving, I probably wouldn't bet against me. To be fair, Anthony, you might be a little bit biased on that one. Just saying. Again, this guy thought that in the Trump administration, everybody was after him. No, dude, not everybody's after you. In fact, you're a bit clownish and actually super entertaining. So, if for anything, I would actually go to the Scaramucci post just to be entertained. Now, here's another thing, and this is great. He said, one of the reporters had suggested that he used the slogan, "No bullshit." Okay. In response, he said, "I got my mouth washed out with soap plenty of times." Unfortunately, it didn't work on me. Can you imagine if it was successful, soap washing by my Nana? I'd probably still be at the White House. Actually, I wouldn't be at the White House. Something else would have happened because I had a target on my back. Scaramucci, man. This guy's always fun for a laugh. If anything, the Scaramucci post, no matter what, will still likely be more successful than Barrett. God bless, man. God bless. Welcome to the world of media. I enjoyed it very much. Oh, okay. That's it. That's all I got for you guys today. Thank you for going around the nation with me for some of the best stories, even if they're disastrous, some fun, some not so fun. But thank you anyway. Let's see. I also want to thank the patrons. Thank everybody for tweeting, for chatting in the chat room. You guys are awesome. Love you guys. And we'll see you guys tomorrow. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, TYT Nation. We'll see you all tomorrow.